What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with some more UFC DFS picks and lineup advice. FanDuel, DraftKings, this time for UFC 289 up in Vancouver. Amanda Nunes, Irene Aldana. I'm with Jake the Snake, owner of MMA DFS.com. Jake, what's up, man?
Not a whole lot, man. A little bit easier week. We don't have 10 late replacements this week with a bunch of mispricing, so sort of back to normal.
Thankfully. Last week was incredibly crazy. We are back with probably, and I don't want to be negative here, Jake, but probably one of the worst pay-per-view cards we could have had. I was a little upset initially when DraftKings decided not to send us to the live final for the pay-per-view UFC 289, mostly for Vancouver, because Vancouver would have been sweet to go to. But now that I see the card, both for entertainment and DFS purposes, I got to say, I'm glad they waited a couple weeks to send us to Jacksonville, because obviously the quality of fights don't look great on the surface here. That can always change. But from a DFS perspective, just 11 fights on a pay-per-view card with a likely 60% owned fighter isn't very fun.
Yeah, man, that's definitely tough. I think the main and the co-main are fun, but yeah, I mean, after that, it kind of looks like, like a fight night card, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, we got Malott versus Fugit in the 3 spot. And just because they're Canadian, and I know we'll get into it in a second. I just thought it was funny during the press conference. There was a clip. Malott was like, "I'm protecting my home turf," and to myself, I was like, "Well, the other guy's Canadian too, dude. Like, it's not just a home fight for you. Both of you guys are Canadian. I'm not sure whose home turf you're saving there."
Well, Fugit's actually from Oregon, I think. He's just south of Canada. So he's actually closer to Vancouver than Malott. But yeah, no, he was born up in the Northwest,
All right, well,
whereas Mallott's on like east side of Canada.
all right. Well, his statement makes a lot more sense now. So I'll stick to DFS advice instead of analyzing the geographical boundaries of these fighters. So instead, what we do in these videos every week, if you are new, welcome. What we do, we break down the main event from a betting and DFS perspective. We talk about any newcomers, just one on this card. We'll play good fighter, bad matchup, bad matchup for fighters that have less than 4 UFC fights under their belt to get some context to their stats. And they'll give out a prize picks play, a fight that you have to target in DFS, and our stream parlay of the week. So, Jake, let's start. Nunes, Aldana. Expected to be the trilogy between Nunes and Pena. She dropped out. Aldana steps in. Nunes still a pretty big favorite. Likely going to be 60% owned in DraftKings contests in large field. Even higher, 80% plus in smaller contests. How do you think the fight plays out? And most importantly, what do we do with this fight in DFS?
Yeah, I mean, I think it most likely plays out like, a typical Nunes fight that we've seen over her current title run, where, I mean, pretty much all of her fights have been she either gets a round 1 finish or she wins the decision and scores like 150 points. That's pretty much how they've all gone. I think she had one 5th round TKO against like Pennington, and that was the only one that didn't end that way. So she's averaging 130 points in the 4 decision wins. Last 3, she scored 126, 153, 159. I'm just going full nuclear. The one time she didn't score a million points in a decision was against Shevchenko like 6 years ago. I think it's hard to kind of see that coming here. I mean, realistically, she's probably going to take this the distance, probably going to wrestle a bunch, land a good amount of striking, and score a ton of points. There's always a chance that she gets an early finish. There's always a chance that she comes in after a year away and she's less motivated. She's 35 years old. She won the belt back. I mean, that was a big emotional swing. I mean, she's been around for a while doing this. I mean, she's about to have her second kid. Maybe she just wants to relax and, hang it up soon. I mean, we don't really know her motivation levels coming in. And I think that's the one wild card. But if she's her normal self, she's probably going to score a ton of points. The only other time she failed to break 100 points or even 107 was like a hyper efficient round 1 submission win over Megan Anderson, where she only scored 99. So that's like, it's one random way where she could fail to score a ton of points. It's just a super hyper efficient first round submission where, she doesn't get much stats. But, Aldana's good. Aldana's a good boxer. She had a really good takedown defense. We kind of have seen that get exposed in her last few fights, though, where it hasn't been as good. We saw Holly Holm have a ton of success, which isn't a great sign. Aldana did say she just got over COVID in that fight. So, I mean, maybe she has an excuse. I don't know. She's powerful. She hits strong, but historically, Aldana's been kind of a round 1 KO or bust option. I think she only scored like 74 and 79 DraftKings points in her 2 third-round finishes, which that presents one more way the fight could fail. Even at her cheaper price tag, if we get a bunch of dogs that score well, if she scores 75 points in a third-round finish, then maybe the whole fight busts that way. I mean, sure, Nunes could also get a mid-round finish. She never really has, but she always could. I mean, that would be one more way that the fight could bust. But overall, most likely the winner is going to score well, whether it's, a normal Nunes fight where she, does really well, or Aldana pulls off another stunning upset, which we've seen a ton of these champs lately, man. Aldana's teammate, Alexa Grasso, obviously upset Shevchenko. And we've seen a ton of champs fall over the last year and a half. Usman, just, Figueiredo, all these guys have been losing. So you never know. I mean, maybe Nunes is next. I mean, Nunes lost. Nunes lost opinion. She's on the list of champs that fell. Oliveira lost. I mean, all these champs, we've seen a change in the guard. So maybe Aldana's next. Maybe she's not. But whoever wins is probably going to score well unless it's a weird mid-round finish or a hyper-efficient finish from Nunes. So I would say that for high risk, you're probably going to want to play one of these fighters in most of your high-risk lineups. And the only real merit for fading the fight is the fact that we have an 11-fight card, and you are going to be looking for ways to get unique. So maybe if you think that, there's a 10% chance that neither one is in the winner, but maybe you play neither in more than 10% of your lines because you realize that that's a good way to get unique. So you're going to be more profitable on those lines than the actual percentages. And then in low risk, I think you stack it because, the winner should score well. So sorry if that was a little bit long.
Nah, you covered all the bases, which we appreciate. And the other key here, and I don't know if it's really a key because of the dynamics of the slate, is Nunes is 9,500. I still have Dvorak at 9,400, Maverick at 9,300. So it's not like she's priced way above everyone else. But still at 9,500, she technically could get priced out because she is the most expensive. But she's likely to score a lot. I mean, Jake, even if she, like, quote-unquote fails and scores like 115, on this slate where we don't expect a lot of high scoring, which, by the way, just for the record, every time we say that, it explodes and there's a ton of scoring, so maybe we're wrong here. But it doesn't appear on the surface to be that high of a scoring slate, and it's only 11 fights, so I feel like the odds of her being priced out is probably lower than it would be on a typical Nunes slate.
Yeah, man, I really agree. I think that we have a lot of expensive options that don't project to have high ceilings. Like I would say Ige is the one guy that if he's shown he can get the quick win bonus and score like 130, but Dvorak historically doesn't score well. Tougher matchup for Maverick here. Builder hasn't shown the ceiling yet. Mallott's a round one, or bust guy seemingly, but he hasn't even been putting up huge scores. So and he's at 8,800. So it's like him and Nunes could get in the winner. So right. We're just looking at 9K options, and it's really tough, man. It really is tough for guys that can outscore.
Fair enough. All right, so we got the full breakdown there, Nunes and Aldana. Let's move on here and let's talk about the one newcomer on the card making their UFC debut. Somewhat short notice, Steve Erceg. We just talked about Dvorak at 9,400. Erceg is at 6,800. Jake, quickly, what is his background? What does he look like? What can we expect from him in his debut?
Yeah, so, I told you earlier, I think he looks like a prop comic, but 27 years old, 9-1, guy coming off the Australian scene from Eternal MMA, same promotion that gave us people like Casey O'Neill and Jack Della Maddalena. But at the same time, this is definitely, I would say, the least impressive of the Eternal MMA fighters. He's a BJJ black belt, one-dimensional grappler. I'm not that impressed by him. I mean, he hasn't really been fighting anyone. Kind of questionable cardio. Looks like a round one sub or bust type guy, and just physically not impressive. I mean, from his fight tape, he's good at getting finishes, but he's been fighting guys like Shannon Ross, who is terrible. He's in the UFC, but yeah, I don't know about some of the guys he's been fighting. So not very excited about him, but I guess he does have some theoretical upside. The only problem is he's stepping into a really tough matchup against David Dvorak, who's, I believe, number 10 ranked in the world. Not really what you want on short notice, coming across the world, too, on short notice for your debut. The one thing I will say about Erceg, he's making his debut on short notice, but he had been scheduled to fight Clayton Carpenter back in May, so he had been preparing for a fight. It's not like he rolled off the couch 10 days ago. So I will give him that, but not that impressed by him overall.
Fair enough. All right. Let's play good fighter, bad fighter, good matchup, bad matchup, fighters who have less than 4 fights under their belt in the UFC. And we'll give a little bit of context to their UFC stats. And we'll start from the first fight of the night to the last fight of the night. Starting with Maria Oliveira, just 3 fights in the UFC. Jay, good or bad? Is this a good or bad matchup?
Yeah, she's a bad fighter, one-dimensional striker, but she's aggressive, and she's facing a kind of like a doppelganger matchup against another one-dimensional striker. So it is a good matchup because, Oliveira's losses have come when she's faced grapplers. This is going to be a striking battle. I don't think that Oliveira is good, but I think it's a great matchup for
her. And to her point, or to playing her, she is one of the lowest owned options on the card with the line move against her. So, there's some reason to play her as well. All right, moving up, we have Blake Bilder, who we saw get a win in his debut against Shannon Young in his second fight. Is he good or bad? Is this a good or bad matchup against Kyle Nelson?
He's okay. I'm not really sold on him, man. If you go back and watch him his regional tape, I mean, the guy is losing until he wins. I feel like he got dropped, 3 times in the first round against a short notice guy. He got controlled for 2 rounds in the fight before that. I mean, it's just he's losing, he's looking bad, and then he comes back late and fights. So I'm not really sold on him, but he's I think he's a black belt now, and he's got decent striking. I want to say he was a Golden Gloves champ. Just not sold on his chin. He kind of enjoys circling around the outside of the octagon, waiting for his spots, which isn't necessarily ideal. But I mean, he showed finishing ability. I'm not sure about the competition he's been facing. But it is a good matchup. Kyle Nelson is terrible. Blake Bilder is undetermined. Kyle Nelson is determined as bad.
All right. So we look for certainties and we look for uncertainties, and we have 2 in this fight on opposite ends of the spectrum. All right. Moving on up, we have Jasmine Jazz the Vicious up against Miranda Maverick.
Yeah, I can't call her good because she's such a one-dimensional grappler. She's a decent wrestler, I should say wrestler, not grappler, because she doesn't have any submission skills. She's just a wrestler. And she's 34 years old, so it's not like she's some young prospect who's going to be making drastic improvements all of a sudden. She is what she is. She's a Canadian wrestler. She's fighting in front of her home crowd. She gets super pumped up on these pay-per-view slates. Too pumped up, honestly. She's pretty cringe, but it's a tough matchup for her. Maverick's a wrestler too, and is better striking than Jasmine. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna have to call Jasmine a bad fighter and a bad matchup.
Yeah, I was gonna ask just specifically about this matchup. If you look at just stats, you may think that Jazz the Vicious has some takedown upside in this fight because you look at the Blanchfield fight against Maverick, but obviously that's Aaron Blanchfield who's gonna be fighting for the title very soon. I truly don't believe the stats tell the whole story with who holds the grappling or the wrestling advantage in this matchup, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would agree. I would say because Blanchfield was able to dominate Maverick, that creates some uncertainty. Maybe Jasmine can too. Jasmine has a big size advantage. And I'm not saying Jasmine has no chance to win. I think that there is a path to victory where, in one of the rounds, she lands a takedown, controls Maverick for the whole round. Another round's close. We go to a decision. It's in Canada. I could definitely see her grinding out a close split decision, but I don't think that's going to score especially well. Her last fight scored well because she absolutely dominated the entire fight on the mat against a debuting one-dimensional striker. That's not who she's facing here. It's going to be a tough matchup. I don't see her just dominating Maverick the way Blanchfield did and the way that Jasmine did in her last fight. So even if she finds a little bit of success, which maybe she will, it could be close. Wrestling exchanges and women's MMA are both notoriously hard to predict. So, this fits the bill for both of those. So she might find some success and she could win, but I don't think she's going to score a ton of points, and I think it's a tough matchup for her.
Fair enough. I agree with all that, just so we're clear. Moving on, we have the third to last fight of the night, Mike Malott, excuse me, sorry, Mr. Malott, and Adam Fugit, who is not Canadian, I just learned 10 minutes ago. Are they good or are they bad? And is it a good or is it a bad matchup for both of them?
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, Fugit's sort of a Canadian-sounding name. Maybe, I don't know. I've never lived.
I don't know why I got the Canadian vibes. I don't know why I did, but whatever. All right, we're moving on.
He was right on the border. He was
Fair
up
enough.
there in Oregon. Yeah, so man, there's a lot of unanswered questions about Malott here. The guy, all 9 of his wins have come in the first round. I mean, anytime we see a fighter like that, it's clear and obvious red flags. What's his cardio like? The guy's never won a fight that made it out of round 1, but he's almost never out of round 1. So we don't know yet. We haven't seen it, but I'm always willing to bet against those guys just to bet on cardio and bet on or against the unknown, however you want to phrase that. But I mean, Malott's good. He's a BJJ black belt. He's got good striking. We just don't know about his cardio, and I just seriously wonder about that. So, I mean, I'm going to call him a good fighter, and I think it's a good matchup because we've seen Fugit get knocked out twice before. But in fairness to him, one of those was in his short notice UFC debut, and it came in the third round, and he looked good in the first two rounds. And the other time, he was fighting up at 185 pounds, which he is not a 185-pound fighter. So he's never been knocked out at 170 with a full camp. And he's never been submitted in his career. So, I mean, I think Fugit's a tough matchup for anyone. And the guy's big. He's got, wrestling experience. He's got Muay Thai experience. I mean, he's shown heart in his fights, and he came out and he's facing exclusively really tough prospects. He faced an undefeated Ecuadorian wrestling prospect in his debut, went to the third round and then lost. Then faced a basically undefeated Japanese prospect making his debut, and he gets a first round TKO finish on the mat. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive. I mean, why can't he take this into the later rounds, see Malott, gas out, and then finish him on the mat with ground and pound? So I think it's a good matchup for both guys, and I think they're both decent, but there's still unknowns on both sides.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, before we continue to the final parts of this episode, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Liking lets us know to continue to make these videos, so give us a thumbs up if you appreciate the content so far. Subscribing is the best way for you to get notified whenever we go live or upload UFC videos. And we always love to hear from you, so drop a comment at this point. Give us your bold take for UFC 289. We'd love to hear from you. So in the comments below, give us your bold take for UFC 289. And whoever gets the boldest call right, we will call you out on the next episode. So let's hear your thoughts. All right, Jake, let's close out the show with a fight that you have to target for DFS. Your favorite prize picks play of the slate, and our stream parlay of the week. Let's start with the fight that you have to target. I mean, there are a couple obvious ones that we talked about already, but which one stands out to you the most?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the one we just talked about. It's the Malott Fugit fight, I think, is the one that you have to target. I mean, it just seems like either Malott's going to get a round one finish, or else he's probably going to fade later in the fight. And at Fugit's price tag, if he gets a later round finish or with his wrestling even wins a decision, I think he's going to return value. So I think both guys have clear upside.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And then for prize picks, remember, you can use promo code OCCUPY to get a 100% deposit match bonus up to $100 at Prize Picks, where you can parlay a bunch of props together. Usually have some soft UFC lines. Jake, there's a bunch over there this week. Which one stood out to you the most?
Yeah, I think there's some decent ones. I like it better this week than last week for sure. I like the Nunes over 112.5 points, man. I think she gets there in a decision. I think she gets there in a finish. So it's really like, does Nunes win? And she's, a negative 350 favorite. So if you're talking about 50-50 props, then I think you have to like the Nunes prop there.
Fair enough. And before we get to the stream parlay, we haven't talked about the co-main, Beneil Dariush and Charles Oliveira. And I know people will be in my mentions and probably yours as well if we don't just spend at least 1 second on this fight. Very quickly, Jake, it should be an exciting fight. I think they're probably the most high-profile, most exciting fight on the card. How do you think it plays out? Because we're going to have, from a DFS perspective, we're going to have a situation where the dog is higher owned than the favorite, which to you and I and to anyone who's been around this show before knows we will always favor the favorite in GPPs and tournaments. In that scenario, is there any reason to stray from that strategy in this particular fight?
No, man, I love Dariush in this fight. I think he's probably the worst opponent that Oliveira could ask for outside of Makhachev. I mean, the deal with Oliveira is he's been really good when the ground is home base for him, when he's facing these one-dimensional strikers that can't or couldn't go to the ground with him. So he gets knocked down, he's on his back. You got Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier. They don't want to go to the ground with him, so he gets time to recover. He's not going to have that luxury with Beneil Dariush. Dariush is, I would say, arguably, a better wrestler, and in a lot of ways, a better grappler than Oliveira. Maybe he's not quite as dangerous offensively with his grappling, but man, he does a lot of things better than Oliveira, and especially in control and top position, defending takedowns. I mean, if you watch that Gamrot fight, I mean, that was an insane masterclass of grappling, of just defending takedowns. I mean, both guys, Gamrot and Dariush, both look great in that fight. And I think Dariush is fully equipped to defend the submission attempts of Oliveira, to control top position, to strike with him on the feet. I mean, just to really negate him all over. And the one thing though is both guys have been a little bit chinny at times, and both guys have decent striking. So either guy could theoretically knock the other out, but I would be surprised if Charles Oliveira submitted Dariush. And I actually think Dariush has a pretty good shot at submitting Oliveira here. I think he could hurt him. I think he could get on the mat, get in top position. And I think, man, once you lock something up against Oliveira, man, I still think he's looking for a way out. You know, that quitter narrative will always be there, but I don't think he's necessarily a quitter. But I think once he knows he's lost, he doesn't want to go to sleep. He doesn't want to die in the mat. He's like, okay, you won. I mean, you look at the Felder fight, you look at the Makhachev fight, like, once it's over, Charles knows it's over. And I think if Dariush locks something up, I think he can finish him in the first 2 rounds.
All right, so we talked about it. For those of you out there wondering about the fight, I'm sure you disagree. Maybe you agree. Let us know in the comments as well. So, Jake, let's close it out. Stream parlay of the week. Low-key, potentially the most exciting fight of the night, maybe the first one, with Oliveira and Belbita. Should be a fun striking battle. For my side of the stream parlay of the week, I'm gonna go Belbita inside the distance, plus 500 or so, I believe last time I checked. So that'll be my leg.
Yeah, man, I think she's got a good shot here, man. She's got power. You know, she used to fight at bantamweight up at like 135 pounds, and Oliveira used to fight at atomweight. So while they're similar stylistically, I think and they're similar height-wise, I just think power and like thickness will be in Belbita's favor. And I mean, she can crack. She can definitely crack. We saw what Marina Rodriguez knocked out Oliveira on Contender Series Brazil. So yeah, I think Belbita's due for a finish eventually. So I don't mind that at all, man. That's good odds. And if we're going to get a little crazy on this parlay, I'm going to go, man, Chris Curtis, who we didn't talk about at all. Round 2 or round 3 KO at plus 800. I feel like Chris Curtis is almost a cheat code here, man. He just was in the corner of Sean Strickland, who just fought Imavov back in January. He helped Strickland prepare for that fight. I mean, it was shorter notice, but he still helped him prepare. He was in the fight the whole time. He watched everything Imavov did. And then he had Strickland and the whole team afterwards to talk about how the fight went. You don't get that situation very often. I was comparing it to the Umar Nurmagomedov and Tagir Ulanbekov, where those two guys are teammates and they both fought Nate Maness, and Umar went to decision. And then everyone's like, oh, Tagir is going to go to decision too. And then he knocks out Maness because you just have all that additional information to work with. I think that's a real benefit for Chris Curtis here, man. I mean, it's not going to be surprising if he goes the distance. I think that's what everyone's expecting, but I could definitely see a late round finish. That's what Curtis excels at. And Imavov oftentimes slows down later in fights. So long-winded way of saying I'm going round 2, round 3 KO, Chris Curtis, plus 800, makes the parlay 56-1. Let's get it.
I like it. And I'm going to message Derek, our social media guy, who may already be on it, to clip it when you said the thickness lies in Belbita's favor. I'm sure that'll get views on Twitter if we clip that. So, so you can follow Jake's work at MMADFS.com, where he writes the sheet every single week, where he breaks down every fight from a betting and DFS perspective. Go check that out. He has the archive where you can look at historical DFS slates for DraftKings and all of his work. So make sure you go check out invaluable resource. The Daily Plug will drop tonight, OccupyFantasy.com, with top plays, lineup construction tips, more bets, everything you need to win on Saturday's card. And then our Occupy model is up and running, ranks every fighter at FanDuel and DraftKings with projected ownership from Jake. And our lineup builder is, of course, up and running, allows you to build up to 300 UFC DFS lineups. So follow Jake on Twitter at DFS_MMA. Follow me at Brian Jester FF. Follow us at Occupy Fantasy. Thank you for listening, and good luck, and enjoy UFC 289.